Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steven with Freeze Peach Gaming. This is where I talk about pop culture, politics, and where the two collide. Please consider giving me a like, comment, and subscribe down below, and share this video out because that really helps me out in getting some more reach, which I can only do with your help. Today, I'm talking about Wizards of the Coast, known as WotC, removing typical alignments, and certain racial traits from upcoming and previous Dungeons & Dragons books. They have changed PDFs, and they are going to be completely removing it in future renditions of the D&D source books that will be coming out. I wanted to talk about why they're doing this and what they're doing and sort of the ideology that I believe is going on behind all of this. So they have removed the typical alignments from races. This is done under the guise of allowing more player freedom. However, what they're doing is they're removing cultural structures for players to base their character's alignment on. And they're doing this... What they're doing is they're essentially trying to remove any sort of racial tropes that they believe are being put upon these different races in the games. You know, drow, orcs, gnomes, dwarves, goblins, what have you. Even kobolds. They removed kobolds being considered as puny and cowardly. And what they're forgetting is that there's always allowed to be an exception for the rule. That's the first thing I want to bring up because, you know, there's usually an exception for the rule, but now they don't want the rule to even exist for people to reject. So, for example, orcs are typically known as being raiders and barbarous, and they're thieves and killers and murderers. Well, I decided one time I wanted to play not a half-orc, but a full-blooded orc character, and I wanted him to be a good character. So I worked it out with my DM to where I was a chaotic, good barbarian orc. This was in Pathfinder, and my character was bubbly and happy and a happy person, and I would go around and try to... I had sympathy for other cultures. I didn't believe that humans were inherently weak and should be, driven before you and hear the lamentations of their women. I wanted to go out and view these cultures and become a part of them even. So there's always an exception to the rule. Or for instance, Dritzt from R.A. Salvatore series. He's not an inherently evil person, even though culturally drow are inherently evil. So why they are removing these rules? They're claiming that they want to combat racist tropes. However, these tropes were never really intended to represent real-world races. This is the people who are doing this are viewing orcs and drow as black people. Orcs based on their culture and orcs based on their culture and drow purely based on their skin color. And they do this because we're not supposed to be judging other people's cultures or other people's skin colors. This follows along the postmodernist idea of subjective reality. So orcs, by their culture, are conquerors. They're raiders. They go in, they kill, they steal, they pillage. This is how their society works. This is how their society functions. The strong rule, the strong lead, and those who are not the strongest kneel before the strong. And they view this inherently as black people. This is what they've said many times. So they believe that black people, based on their culture, are raiders and barbarians and murderers and thieves and rapists. And so because they view black people this way, they view orcs as being allegorical to black people. But that's not true, because, if we look at the origin of orcs, they were initially elves who were corrupted by evil. And so in order for them to not seem like the racists that they are, they're going to just remove it in a Fahrenheit 451 style censorship. Just broad swaths of wow, say that 5 times fast. Broad swaths of censorship going out there and removing all of this backstory and lore and culture behind these races because they don't want people to view orcs as black people, even though they're the only ones who actually view orcs as black people. The rest of us view orcs as orcs. They're corrupted elves. And drow, it's even worse with drow because it's purely based on their skin color. They don't want us judging drow's culture because they have a dark skin color, and they automatically view judging another culture that has a different skin color as inherently racist. So we'll talk about Drow. Drow have predominantly a three-tiered society. You have the women at the top. They are it's a matriarchal society. The women are the priestesses and the bureaucrats. They are the leaders of society. They determine what happens for everyone below them. Second tier of that society, their second-class citizens, are men. And the men in this society are soldiers, sorcerers, and scholars. And then below that, you have slaves, and this is the defining part of Drow culture. They are slavers. They go out to other races within the Underdark, and they go topside during the night, and they raid villages, and they collect people. They capture people, and they bring them back down to the Underdark because they need a working class society, a working class portion of their society that props up the rest of their utopian society. They have to have slaves down at the bottom producing the raw materials and the raw goods so that the rest of society can live in their scholarly utopia. And I really think that this part about Drow, they really don't want to have that out there anymore because they view it as inherently communist, because it is. This is how communism actually winds up being not portrayed, but used in reality. They don't want that portrayal going on in fiction. So you look at communism in the 1930s in Russia. Under Stalin, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, they were trying to combat the recession that was going on all over the world. And the easiest way for them to do this and how they did do it was through grain. They knew that other people in other places were going to need more food. So they starved out the Ukrainian population. They created a famine in Ukraine known as the Holodomor, where upwards of 10 million people died because they were being used as slave labor to collect grain that was being sent then to Moscow, where they would take that grain and sell it in Moscow to improve the ruble and to improve the rest of society. So in Moscow, you have parties, you have architecture going on, you have new buildings being put up, you have just massive, prosperity going on in Moscow, while just, a couple hundred miles to the south, you have a full-on manufactured famine going on, and this is how Drow society also works. So I think that these postmodernists, who also tend to be socialists, particularly in WotC, there's a lot of socialist progressives over there. They don't want for Drows to reflect the utopian society that they want to have. But yes, this is all done under the guise of making the game more open and more free to all of the players. But in reality, that's going to have completely different consequences. And I'm going to get into the consequences in another video, which will be coming out in the near future. So be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell down below, where I get into what I think will be perhaps not even unintended, perhaps even intended consequences of why they are getting rid of the alignment system and racial traits out of these books. So everybody keep your eyes open for that. Have a wonderful day, and never be afraid to speak your mind.